Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, digging deeper into the innermost point, down towards the Nakuda Hapnimis, which we've said is going to be our focus this year. So we started off with Bereshis, which is the emergence of the innermost point, the possibility of the innermost point, that tiny dot in the middle of the base, which represents the sum total of existence, of experience of existence, and the revelation of God in this place. It's the emergence of a point. It's the Nakudas Harashimu, that point of the trace of the infinite light of Hashem that appears as a result of the Tzimtzum. In the Tzimtzum before creation, Hashem removes all of his infinite light, so to say, and in its stead, what remains is the Nakudas Harashimu, the point of the trace, which is the infinite light that is never removed. That innermost point, which begins to express itself in the secret of the highest place of Malchus, which also in that place was the lowest possible point of the highest levels. But the emergence of the point is the emergence of Malchus, the Ein Sof, the ability to connect to Hashem in this world. And then in Bereshis, that innermost point gets revealed within the heart of the base, meaning at the core of all of existence rests the innermost point that holds all separation together, that reveals how all complication is rooted in simplicity, and how all distance is ultimately just an extension from closeness. But that innermost point is hidden within the base. It's a hidden tiny aleph that we don't necessarily have access to, but it rests at the very core of all of existence. That's the bas ayin, that's the innermost point of the eye that's encased within all of the garments of the letters and the words and the sentences and the prakim and the chapters and the books. In the innermost point, all of that potential exists in a real way, in spite of the fact that it's not yet revealed. It's everything everywhere at once, but in a quintessential pointed way of emunah. B'chabakuk v'hi'imid al Achas, the singular pillar upon which all things rests, is the secret of Emunah, which is Malchus, which is that tiny black dot that connects to the core of that which is at the heart of everything. That Nakuda, that original point of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation. And in Bereshis, it gets hidden away, and it's the Or HaGanus, it's the hidden light that is encased within existence itself. When Adam HaRishon was still in Gan Eden, the innermost point was everywhere revealed. Gan Eden was the innermost point. The Eitz HaChaim and the Eitz HaDas both were emergent from the center point in the Gan. All of the tzaddikim ask, how could you have two center points? The truth of the matter is that they are two expressions of a singular thing. The point expresses itself throughout the Gan. But because we chose a path of separation rather than a path of life and unity, obviously for all of the reasons that we know it had to be done, the point gets concealed and kicked out of Gan Eden. And the kol is mitalech, the point dances beyond us. We can't grab it anymore. We miss the point. There's a chait, the hachtia et hamatara. We lose sight of the innermost point of all of existence. We lose sight of the light. We lose sight of the fact that simsum in a kipshuto, that Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, up, up, down, down, right, left, all around, here, there, everywhere. That's where he can be found. He can be found anywhere because he is everywhere. That leis asar panim, that his atzmus is miskala b'chol makom. We don't have a hasag of it, we don't grasp it, but it's revealed in every place. But then as a result of being kicked out of Gan Eden, we lost sight of that innermost point, and we fell into complication, and we fell into wandering, a pagam habris, a lack of yesod, a lack of connectivity to an innermost point, a descent into chaos. The stirrings of inessentiality, where nothing is important because the center cannot hold, and the midpoint of existence goes under concealment, and everything fragments and falls apart, and that's the Dor HaMabul. And then that innermost point is revealed in the secret of Noach, which is the Nakuda of Chain, that point of grace that emerges from that irreducible place within the innermost point of the heart, which is that point which receives the innermost point of the mind, which is just the translation of that innermost point from above descending down into our minds. Yud Chachma Kaduma, the original point of wisdom, which is that original Yud, that dot, that point which is now revealed in our minds to become the Pintali Yid, that Nakuda HaPnimis, that we can be Moiser Nefesh on. And Noach HaTzadik is taken out of the Mabul, but still this innermost point of Chayin, the Chesed, that has the ability to bring up the entire world. Because as Rabbi Nachman told us already, there are going to be times where the chen and the chashivas of the Welt is going to be by them. It's going to be by everybody else. The chen and the chashivas of the Yidden is going to seem to fall away. And the whole world is going to seemingly forget about how beautiful the Yidden are and the innermost point of chen that the Yidden carry. And Rabbi Nachman gives us an eitzah that through Torah and through tefillah, we have the ability to be ma'ala archein. When we own that innermost point of grace that exists within each and every one of us, where we are singularly unique in the face of God, and all extension is just circumstantial, but what is most essential is the innermost point of connectivity, a connectivity that knows no separation, not because we've chosen not to separate, but because even separation is revealed to be part and parcel of the point itself. A point cannot extend beyond itself. There's no escaping a point. A point is what it is. It's an akudas dio that contains all possibility within itself without extension, without complication. It just abides in its thisness. That's the nakuda of chen that rests in the heart of each and every yid, the chelek eloi kaim yimal mamish. And in Parshas Noach, what we find is that that innermost point goes into a state of hibernation. It's protected within the teva. It illuminates outwards, or the illumination comes from outside inwards. However we describe the illumination of that point, the point persists within its encasing of the teva. It's protected. It goes back into the womb, because we saw what happens when we deviate from the innermost point. We left Gan Eden and we fell into Gehenna. And so when Gan Eden appears in the midst of Gehenna, which is the secret of the Teva, the recuperation and the rehabilitation and the re-revelation, or the revelation itself of the fact that the innermost point has always been there, that the diamond is always there, that the treasure is always beneath our bridge, that Tova ani be'enav, and that my bas ayin, I'm the bas ayin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now gibor dor sheyechudcha kevavat shamrim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you guard the seekers of your unity like the apple of your eye. And we're all seekers of unity. We're all seeking out the unity that comes about by way of the separation that precedes it, with the radical belief to be dor sheyechudcha, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu guards and cherishes each and every yid like bas eino, like the innermost point of the innermost desire that awakened the purpose of the creation of the world. And that's revealed in the Teva, and every yid's a big tzaddik. But what happens when it comes back out is that it seeks to recreate that by way of intoxication, by way of oblivion, by way of forgetting the self, and not connecting to anything, instead of remembering the self and remembering the innermost point. And so the nakuda of chen goes away. And we again remember that, okay, this innermost point, in order for it to be cherished, it has to be under like Gan Eden-like settings. And perhaps it can't exist outside of Gan Eden. Perhaps the innermost point has to remain in the garden. And then comes along Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu fixes the Welt. Avraham Avinu says, I have a daughter and her name is everything, meaning to say the Bas Ayin is everything. Everywhere I go, there I am. I extend the point. Lech Lecha is the call to draw the kav, the ray, and extension out of the point itself. The radical secret of faith and the destruction of that idolatrous impulse to sedify the innermost point to something, or to sediment, or to encapsulate, or to idolize the innermost point as something that is not subject to presence in this world, and it's not accessible to us, and it's only an idol, and it has no reality. Avram Avinu comes and shatters that, and he says, no, there's no boundaries. The innermost point will extend itself beyond the boundaries. And not only that, but the innermost point will reveal itself at each and every stage of its extension. That the extension itself comes about from the innermost point, like we said. The chiddush of the Mittler Rebbe, that the Rebbe was talking about on Motzei Shabbos, Baruch Hashem, is that the ray is not something separate and apart from the point, but rather the ray is an extension of the point in the radical way in which the point is now extended while still maintaining its pointed nature, yet nevertheless extending beyond itself. Which means to say that the extension, which is the benefit of the ability to draw the point out and reveal its potency with more ferocity, that generally comes with a symptom of losing that hyper-focused, infinitesimal, essential nature of the point. But the radical secret of Avram Avinu, of Lech Lecha, is to drag the hyper-essentiality of the point into the benefits of extension, but the benefits of extension do not take away from the innermost point. This was what Avram Avinu was concerned about, that going into the derech, traveling with the innermost point, drawing the Torah out into the world, that theoretically that would diminish the capacity to cherish the innermost point. And what Hashem says is, go for your pleasure, go for your goodness, that the descent and the extension is ultimately only to return back to the true potency of the innermost point, which holds everything that can possibly emerge from it. And then we see how the innermost point extends itself. But then, once again we encounter this prevention. And the prevention begins to arrive by way of Sodom, by way of this topsy-turvy nature. That once the innermost point can be extended, then theoretically a person can mistake the extension for the innermost point. And if a person mistakes the extension, which is the hisgalus and the externalization and the chitzonius and the way things look and the way things appear and the way that they express themselves in asiya, if we come to see that as the innermost point, then it's very easy to forget about the real nekuda hapnimis. What Avram Avinu tried to do is reveal how the innermost point, the hyper-essential nekuda, where everything is okay, can be extended and it can move into a state of transit where I can feel comfortable wherever I am, on the derech as much as I feel it in the bayis. But that's only because Avram Avinu had a daughter and he called her everything, that the bas ayin of Avram Avinu, the innermost point, the hay of Avram Avinu, was that innermost nekuda where he was aware that everything was emunah. And because everything was emunah, so anything that extended, Avram Avinu was not mibulbal. As long as Avram Avinu was able to ensure that more people came to believe in God, that was the ikr. But as it typically is, whenever there is a mission that's started, whenever a radical secret is developed by a trailblazer or a tzaddik, so there are external forces that come along and draw from that illumination that is coming into the world as a result of that righteous individual, and the ideas become manipulated in a way that they can misconvey the nakuda of the tzaddik, God forbid, deliberately speaking. Hashem should protect us from foolishness, but I'm talking here about a certain manipulative drive that once this light of the tzaddik comes into the world, and this possibility of the extension of the innermost point, so then the hither side of that emerges, and that's Sodom. Sodom was kulo externality. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. It had the image of the garden itself. It was as beautiful, and it was a remnant of what Gan Eden may have looked like to one degree or another, just like Mitzrayim. But in truth, Bepnimius, it was empty and it was devoid of all things. It was devoid of any innermost point. It was all relativism to the degree that there was no grounding of the system to make relativity reasonable. Relativity is only reasonable when there's a grounded point at the heart of the system. But relativity detached from the innermost point and the Archimedean point that grounds the system now becomes this wheel of changes where whatever it is that a person feels is the innermost point is where they decide that that's where the innermost point is. And that was the deprivation and the depravity and the destructive nature of Sodom, this pollution of the innermost point, this getting trapped in the externality of things, which is why Lot went there, because he was external to Avram Avinu, and a forgetting of the innermost point. But what happens with the transformation of Sodom is that Sodom reveals how we re-access the innermost point after it has been lost through the extension of the point. Meaning to say, how do we recover? How do we uncover? How do we dig and find and recollect and retrieve the innermost point of the nakuda that Avram Avinu brings into the world, which is the fact that Hashem is good, the world is good, everything is good, that the Ratzon Hashem is revealing itself in every aspect of existence throughout all of the worlds, from the upper, highest possible spaces in which the mind can contemplate the infinite. That place is only the vessel through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shining his light down to us in generosity and openness and extension by way of Hashgacha Pratis and our ability to see the hand of God in history and to see within the concealment how there's revelation, and to live with calmness and patience and all rightness, and to trust and to live with a sense of safety and blessing and protection and enoughness, and to feel that one is in the right place in the right time, and not to feel distracted, and not to feel confused, and not to feel afraid, and not to feel sad, and not to feel broken, and not to feel a craving for an endlessness that already exists within us. That's the innermost point. That's the Nakuda Hapnimi. That's the Malchus of Keser of Malchus that remains after everything falls away. The belief in our capacity to be Moser Nefesh and think beyond our best selves, to re-enter into a second naivete, a space of healthy, robust, curative, empathic, redemptive faith, an emuna, an akudas of emuna kol zos, a place of fixing. How do we retrieve that? And Chazal themselves say this, that Matzatzi David Avdi. Pasuk says that Hashem says, I have found David, my servant. I have found David. I found him. Almost as if Hashem was Mavakesh David. Hashem is always searching out this innermost point of David. Because David, we know, is Malchus. David is this low point, this Nakuda Kitana, the Or Dakyik, and this weakened light that shines in darkness and illuminates darkness in a very subtle and humble and modest way, to the degree that darkness itself is not even aware of the fact that it's slowly but surely being transformed into light. And then suddenly, Pitom Yavam Mashiach, and the walls of concealment are kicked down, and the inner Nakuda is revealed for all to see. This light of David Malka Mashiach, the Nakuda, the Bas Ayin, the Regel Haravi'i, that point of the heart of David, which was awoken at the midpoint of nighttime by way of the northern wind that blew through his heartstrings, that played this song of yearning and an endless desire to reach back to that innermost point, to reach back to that Nakuda Ketana, to that Bas Ayin, to the Nakuda of Malchus, the Ein Sof Kavyachol, to go back to the Shorish of Emunah. And Matzatzi David Avdi, where do I find David Malka Mashiach? Where is he found? Sodom, he's found in Sodom. That the Shorish of David is found in Sodom. The Shorish of David, the David Melech Mashiach, the light of all lights, the light of pointed essentiality, that a person can say, if I am here, everything is here. I'm an ikan hakol kan. Hidal va'ani ani, that I'm impoverished, then I'm the lower dalid, and then I'm the vav that attaches that lower dalid of impoverishment back to the highest dalid, which is the place of dalus, of drawing down from above, effulgence, 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 light of all lights. Tainug in Avodas Hashem, Tainug in this moment, L'saneg al Hashem. And David HaMelech, this light is found in Sodom, in this Mahapecha Hagadola, in this place of this topsy-turvy nature of where the upside down takes shape. And in order to fix this place, Hashem is Mahapech Sodom. In order to uncover the light of David HaMelech, Hashem is Mahapech Sodom. He transforms it, he reverses it, he flips it around. V'nahapulchu asher yishlatu haYehudim hema b'seinehem. That this first iteration of the Hippuch, the first time in the Torah that we see this transformative stage of a flipping, a complete and utter transformation, a roundabout, is when it comes to undoing the klipa of Sodom and revealing the Nakuda of Malchus, the innermost point once again, after it has fallen into the places of manipulation and forgetfulness. And the secret of the hippuch, the secret of the transformation, has to be understood, because when we see something for the first time in the Torah, we have to understand that it represents the kernel of what this idea is always going to represent. So if this transformation, this hippuch, this reversal, this flipping around, this turning over, there's reversing it from what we thought it was to something else, this is going to express itself in, obviously, Purim itself, v'nahapechu. And as Rabbi Nachman teaches us, and Rabbi Nassim brings down, that yesh inyan sheyitapech hakol, there is a matter, there is something that has the ability to transform everything for goodness. There's an innermost point, that a hidden spot within faith, that if a person touches it, and if Klal Yisrael massage that place in Metzias enough, by way of our Hisayrus, then eventually yesh inyan sheyitapech hakol l'tova. There is something that transforms everything into positivity. The secret of hafachba, the kulaba. So what is a hippuch? What is a transformation? What is a reversal? So there's an undoing of something, and then there's the transformation of something. The undoing of something negative can take place in numerous stages. There's the submission of that thing. There's the making of that thing to be smaller than it actually is, reducing it inside, separating ourselves from it, and then eventually coming to understand how to properly relate with it. That's called hachna'a, havdala, hamtaka. That's the avodah of iskafia, of the refinement of the issue and pushing it away, pushing it aside. The issue is there, and I want to find salvation that comes from outside of the issue. This thing, as I see it, this mitziyut, this moment, this thought, this feeling, this experience, this concern, this reality, whatever it is, I want to get around it. I want to find a way around it. And there's healthy ways of suppression, and there's very unhealthy ways of suppression, as our generation knows very well. That's the first mahalach. That's not a hippuch. That's not a transformation. That's just a pushing away, or an undoing, or an erasure, or a destruction, or a refusal to look at it, but it is not a transformation. A transformation is hafcha, the ability to transform something, is to go directly into that place of concealment, to go directly into the very thing that appears to be blocking the true thing that I'm searching for. And to have the confidence in the true thing that I'm searching for, to know deeply and intuitively that what I'm searching for is here right now. And that just means that the way that it's presenting itself to me is something that needs to be transformed. But the innermost point is right here, right now. The tikkun is right here, right now. The thing that I need is right here, right now. And all I need to do is reorient myself to whatever it is that I'm encountering. I have to be mahapech. I have to turn it around. I have to realize that I'm seeing it in the wrong way. I'm looking at it in the wrong way. I'm looking at it in reverse. I have to reverse it. I have to stop it, twist it, and spin it around and be able to look at it from a new vantage point, and then to come to find that, wow, from the vantage point that I was looking at, this tzadi reish and hey that I have in my life looked like a tzara. But when I look at it from a different perspective, on the galgal hachozer of the galgale haosios, which is the secret of the hipuch of the osios, the transformation of the top becoming the bottom and the bottom becoming the top, and the vanahapechu at sheyishul tu ayudim hema b'seinayim, it's the recognition that, oh, these three letters, tzadi reish hey, were really spelling reish tzadi hey ritzei. I was just looking at it in a different way. This is the hipuch. The hipuch, the transformation, is the rectification that's rooted in the issue itself, where the issue itself is transformed to reveal that in truth, when looked at properly, it contains the very openings and the pathways that the person is searching, and that the mania itself can be transformed into neimus. This is the secret of the hipuch. This is the radical revelation of that, the gvura and the severity and the difficulty and the darkness and all of the things that appear to be so antithetical to the light, and all of the things that go bump in the night and in our hearts and in our minds, and the frustration, agitation, exhaustion, whatever the symptoms are. And again, and the joy and the excitement and the hope and all of the expectance, all of the good things that we experience as well. That if I dig down deep into it, there's an akuda pnimis that gives me the ability to see it as being revelatory of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the secret of the hipuch. And in Sodom, this is how David HaMelech is revealed, because ultimately, Sodom is the perversion of Malchus. Sodom was the perversion of the Nakuda Pnimis. Because like we said, if the Nakuda HaPnimi can be found everywhere, then I'm the one who's going to decide where the Nakuda HaPnimi is found, and then I become the innermost point of existence, and I become God, and I become idolatry, and I become the problem itself. And when Malchus is not utilized properly, it becomes salt. It becomes salty. It takes away from our ability to be satisfied. It distances us from a place of connectivity. In order to uncover the innermost point of Malchus, which is the light of Mashiach, which is the light of Ruach Samoavi, which is the light of Mashiach, Matzatzi, David Avdi, B'Sodom, it's the secret of the hipuch, is that when you're looking at something that's concealed, and it looks like the innermost point is not to be found there, and you don't know how to reattach your mind and your heart to God in that place, you have to dig down deep into that nakuda, into that concealment, and you have to transform it. You have to reach down to the innermost point of the concealment, that point of all points that gives life, that gives vitality to all of the structure of concealment, that innermost point of goodness, the nakuda hapnimi and the nakuda tova that Rabbi Nachman demands that we find in each and every situation, to dig and dig and dig and dig until we come to the Beis HaMikdash of the moment, until we come to uncover the Even Hashasiya in that place. That Achen Yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh v'anoichi lo yadati, I didn't know. Yaakov Avinu, as we're going to see, is the one, again, each and every one of the tzaddikim is giving us a different way of relating to the innermost point. But this hipuch, this transformation, is reaching down deep into something, and then by grabbing hold of the very bottom point that holds the whole thing together, it's the rug that holds the whole room together, you grab it and you transform it, you flip it around entirely, and you show that when you hold on to the innermost point of light that is encased within whatever concealment there is, then the whole situation becomes changeable. The whole situation now becomes seen in a different light. There's openings that appear, and I can transform the thing. It slows itself down so that I can look at it with calmness and faith and say, okay, I can find goodness in here. That's the Nakud of David HaMelech. That's the V'nahapechu. That's the light of Purim. That the innermost point is when I lean into the fact that here, right now, Hashem, I can return myself back to you. This is the hipuch of Sodom. That I can dig down deep into that place and reattach myself to you. That the Nakuda Pnimis is never away anymore. Noah Tzaddik was afraid that the innermost point would disappear because it was a different kind of tzaddik. It was grace. Hashem gave him an innermost point. But with Avraham, Bas Haya V'Kol Shema, we're the Bas, we're the daughter. Nishmas Yisrael is the daughter of Avram Avinu. We're the daughter of Avram Avinu, we're Malchus, that's Makusha to Chachma. And each and every one of us is the responsibility of ensuring that the innermost point goes with us wherever we are, even into Sodom, because even in Sodom, Matzatzi David Avdi B'Sodom, that there's a hipuch. When you dig down deep to the bottom of something, you transform it and you flip the entire thing into its opposite. Kulo hafach lavan tahorhu. If it has all been transformed into white, then it's tahor, because when the inside becomes the outside, and the outside becomes the inside, and above becomes below, and below becomes above. In that place, that's the Shar Hanun that transforms everything to good. Now, this Nakuda, so what is it that awakens this Nakuda? What is it that is the Mahapecha? The Mahapecha is the arrival of the three Malachim. The Meshilach says explicitly that the three Malachim had to come because each and every malach represents a shlish, 1/3 of the world. And so there had to be a moment of purification. There had to be a moment of tahara. There had to be a moment of tmimus, of Yosef Pesach HaOel, of possibility for Avram Avinu to again look into Sodom and say, I'm going to find the innermost point. I'm going to find that innermost point that rests in Sodom. But it's not a radical transformation. It's not a revolution. It's an uncovering. It's an inner confidence that the innermost point is there no matter what. And what happens is that as a result of this hipuch, as a result of this v'nahapechu, the next thing that happens is Yitzchak is born. Yitzchak Avinu is born. And Yitzchak now becomes the guardian of the innermost point. And Yitzchak is the Yud Sachak. It's the laughter that comes about when we attach ourselves to the innermost point, to the Yud in each and every moment. That Yitzchak sat where he was and he was able to uncover the light of Hashem wherever he was, whatever he needed. There was rebellion. Okay, I'm fine. The innermost point is here. He lived with an Olam Haba in front of his eyes. He didn't have to go anywhere. Because everywhere that Yitzchak looked, he laughed it back into shape. He allowed it to crack up, all of the externalization to crack up and to see the innermost point of the core of everything. And v'nahapechu, the light of the schoik, laughter comes about when there's a reversal of things. When something is reversed. Rabbi Nachman said in his stories that the way to make our way through culture, to make our way through exile, to make our way through fallen imaginations and the imaginations of falling is to uncover the innermost point of schoik. What is funny here? What is that nakuda? When you can grab hold of the innermost nakuda of something, you can reveal its opposite and you can show how its opposite is also true. And then from within that place, it's v'nahapechu asher yishlatu haYehudim heim b'seinehem. Now, the innermost point creates ripples. The innermost point creates a reaction. It's a ripple in still water, meaning the still water is when the innermost point has grown exhausted and it's no longer making its noise. That's the place of Sodom. But then suddenly, somehow, there's a ripple in still water when there is no pebble thrown. One would think that, I want to recreate the innermost moment, so I have to throw a pebble in. But in truth, there's no pebble thrown. The vibrations and the awakening of the innermost point is that Matzatzi David Avdi B'Sodom, I found the innermost point. It was always already there. The ripple is there from within. It comes from within, that hippuch, that laughter, that sha'ashua. And this is how Yitzchak Avinu is born. And this is how Yitzchak Avinu is born. And this is how Mashiach is born. And this is how the light of redemption comes about. By attaching ourselves to the innermost point, the Yud Sachak, to attach ourselves to the Yud, to the tiny dot that rests in the middle of the base. That yes, it might appear to be a tiny dot, but in truth, it's just really an aleph of Anochi. And yes, it might appear to be an aleph of Anochi, but the aleph of Anochi is really just the Yud Vav Yud. And really, the Yud Vav Yud is just the Yuds, because the Vav is 3 Yuds. And really, it's all Yuds. And then when you go into the Yud itself, you find that each and every Yud is really made up of 3 Yuds. And each and every one of those 3 Yuds is made up of another 3 Yuds. Ad infinitum, the innermost point is indivisible down to its core, but it's ever growing. And there's no place that we go where we can't uncover the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the light of redemption. Ke'ata Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, you're that light. Maral says, why is it that Yitzchak Avinu, that Yud Sachak, that laughter that comes about by attaching ourselves to the innermost point that will be revealed in the future, that Nekuda HaPnimi Shebetoich HaLev, that's revealed by way of the Mesiras Nefesh for our Amunah. that innermost point of goodness, that bas ayin, the ability to silence the self and stop the mind from running backwards or forwards, but to be and to trust that to be is to be with Hashem and imanikan hakolkan. And right here, right now, there's an or of Gan Eden that's shofea tamid melamala, as Rabbeinu says that the ni'imas haTorah is yored tamid. We just have to make a kli for it. Be'ezras Hashem, we should be zeichet to find David Malka Mashiach in Sodom and to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'nahapechu asher yishlitu haYehudim hema b'seineihem. Be'ezras Hashem.